Welcome back, everybody. I just want to say that today's episode is sponsored by. Oh, wait. You assholes haven't sponsored us yet. So, nobody. Anyway, we got Ian in the studio again because last episode was great. One thing I forgot to mention last time is that Ian is actually responsible for the name Midwest Mind Meld. So, thank you for that, man.
No problem, dude.
How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. People remember alliteration.
Yes, they do.
They do. That's
You're not wrong.
fact.
Jason, how you doing, brother?
Not too bad, not too bad.
So,
Wish I was actually on the beach instead of just wearing a beach shirt, but that's all right.
you got fucking balding Tony Montana over
You're a
here.
son of a beach.
Anyway, man, so today I kind of want to get into talking about, let's talk about the American military.
Okay.
And how it's changed.
What aspects do you want to hear about first?
Well, like, how do we go from, like, World War I, World War II soldiers to today? Like, there's a big comparison, if we hold up pictures of, like, veterans, like World War I, World War II, back in the day, back in their prime, and you hold up, a picture today of just some Army recruits. I mean, what's a big difference you're going to notice?
Way less sexy.
Wait, which one's way less sexy?
Now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Honestly, I think where it all starts is if we go back like World War I, World War II, people joined because they had a cause to fight for. Right now, we don't necessarily have a cause that we're fighting for. 9/11 was kind of one of those situations, but we didn't really have, like, right now we're not battling somebody. Like, yes, we're over in the Middle East. Yes, ISIS has a presence there, and we're trying to eliminate that. But it's not anything on the same scale as World War I, World War II.
Right.
And so I feel like a lot of it's changed now because people that are in the military now, it's divided into two groups of people. People that want to join the military and serve their country, and people who have nowhere else to go. And in today's society, and with the cost of living being so high, the military offers free living. They give you money to go to school. They pay you to do a job. They pay you to go train and learn your job. And I think that the people that join that have nowhere else to go are there just because they can get the most out of the military rather than just trying to make it on their own.
Right. And you think there was maybe some of that back then, even in the World War I, World War II era?
I would say, yeah. But not as astronomically common as it is now.
No, I don't think so.
When I went through basic training, I know that there was a guy, there was actually a couple guys that were there because they had nowhere else to go. And there was also one other soldier that was there that he was just there for college money. Like, people, I mean, the military, the U.S. military has offers great benefits, and the thing is a lot of people will utilize that as well. I mean, their insurance is really good, and like I said, free money to go to school. But not only that, a lot of jobs that you can get in the military, you can utilize on the civilian side as well.
Right.
So they pay you to learn the job, and then while you're in the military, you get that experience. So when you get out of the military, you can apply for a job, because a lot of jobs nowadays, and I'm going to apologize to viewers, I am suffering a chest infection right now, so my voice is kind of messed up. But
I always thought your voice was messed up, so it's
You're disgusting.
But yeah, I think that at least from my observation, that's why a lot of people join. And I have a lot of I've seen a lot of people too who do their time and they get out because they just wanted they wanted to do that time. They serve their country, but for some of them they're not lifers.
Right.
Honestly, I see that's probably one of the biggest changes in recruiting, or in the recruits, I should say, that we have. There was a study done a couple years ago that I was listening to at a recruiting and retention thing that I went to, and I think it was at that time it was like only 20% of high school of a high school like graduating year, only 20% of those individuals are actually eligible to join. And that's due to, alternatively medicated, overweight, health issues, things like that. So I feel like part of that plays a big role in the situation as well.
Right. And I find it kind of interesting. Sorry, Ian. I find it kind of interesting that, like, now if you're on some type of, like, really strong stimulant or some type of, psychoactive drug that you're prescribed, you're ineligible. But, like, when you look at, like, earlier wars like World War I, World War II, like, the U.S. Army was famous for going around giving pep pills, which was usually just speed to the soldiers.
Well, yeah, I think obviously, we all know circumstances changes. They change depending on the situation. I think that now modern day, especially with the enemy we're fighting over in the Middle East right now. That's another thing that's obviously changed. World War I, World War II, even Vietnam, we were fighting an army. We were fighting, combatants face to face.
Right.
That's not necessarily a thing anymore. They like to bomb us over there. And are there gunfights? Yes, of course. You can talk to any combat vet and they'll tell you that, that they've seen fire. And so they do shoot at us, but a lot of our injuries and a lot of the things that come before the firing is blowing things up.
Right.
And it's a sad war to fight, and it's also the first war that we really fought where their army, so to speak, because I guess you can kind of consider ISIS or the Taliban an army in a sense, because they weren't organized, but they dress like civilians.
Right.
And that's probably one of the hardest things for our troops over there is when they're doing their job over there. They don't know how to differentiate that.
Right. Well, I mean, I think they faced a lot of that in Vietnam too, and like with especially the Charlie, because they weren't really an army. They were they were more like
a militia style,
pretty much fighting guerrilla warfare, but they were much different than the NBA. But what were you gonna say earlier, Ian?
Oh, all right. So basically, I was saying is like with the whole so we have a military system where basically you get benefits, I would say, from having the military service be optional. So like the people who want to go do that, go and do that. But what you're saying is there's external incentives that kind of changes the formula a little bit. So you might have, there's a lot of benefits that come with that. So you might have people who are really only there for the benefits. So you get less of the benefit of having an optional fighting force. So there are benefits that you have soldiers who want to be there and they want to do that, but now you have people who are like, hey, I'm here for all these these little bonus things.
Yeah, exactly.
So you lose something when you do that, even though you do increase the amount of recruits that you would get.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, do you kind of lose something too, when you implement the draft? We've seen that in earlier wars. The famous one, of course, was Vietnam, even though the draft did exist before then. But Vietnam was really where you got a real big pushback from people. You got draft dodgers. Even people say Bill Clinton was a draft dodger.
Yeah.
But so what kind of soldier do you get when you basically force somebody to be there who maybe really didn't want to be there?
Well, I mean, when you were saying before the podcast, how you guys you used to be able to yell or get into physical fights and stuff.
Yeah.
With
training.
When you were in training. So, I mean, I imagine they got we hardened them before they left. So right. I mean, there's all these little things that add and subtract to what you're gonna get. So I imagine if you made it through basic and you had your ass kicked a whole bunch of times, then you probably wouldn't be as bad. But if we were to go ahead and do that now, and then probably not implement some ass kicking, then I don't know.
Well,
that seems like it could not go great.
No, that in itself, and Ian, you make a very good point. Not being able to deal with the people and the attitude that you get, and I saw a lot of it when I went through basic training. It really got soft. My first impression of basic training was it's going to be hard, it's going to be this, that, and
you're thinking Full Metal Jacket.
I wouldn't say that bad, but I would say I definitely expected to struggle a little bit.
Right.
And honestly, I mean, I went through and I was a little older. I didn't enlist when I was 17 or 18. I went through. I was a little older. I had a little maturity under my belt, but for the young guys, man, it was hard for them. I mean, these guys had they'd never been away from their families, and they struggled. And I guess for me, maybe that might be why. I moved out of my house when I was 18. I'd been away from my parents, my family. I don't have family in the States, so I'm used to that.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely think that not being able for these guys to not be able to, for the drill sergeants, drill instructors, whatever branch you want to call it, not being able to put hands on a soldier is not going to prepare them for what they're about to see. And I think that plays a huge role because, like you said, when you implement the draft, you're sending people to war who don't want to go to war.
Right.
And unfortunately, they have to be ready because when they shut down, it costs people lives.
Right.
And I think that especially in Vietnam, because Vietnam being probably one of the worst wars that we've actually had that we really didn't need to be a part of, but whatever. That's my opinion.
Well, yeah, okay. Like a lack of violence is not going to prepare somebody for violence. Like basically,
Well, exactly.
In a nutshell.
Well, and so I mean, we can definitely agree that training has significantly changed. I mean,
Changed.
changed.
Yeah, exactly.
Changed. But yeah, because like from older guys that I've definitely talked to, older vets, they definitely tell me that things changed. Post Vietnam.
Yeah, they did.
And so pre-Vietnam, which is what Ian was referring to earlier, pre-Vietnam, from my understanding, the drill sergeant could basically kick your ass physically if they really wanted to. If you were being a dick or you were being a pussy, like they could put hands on you.
Oh yeah.
And like that still went on after Vietnam, but it definitely wasn't encouraged, and it definitely didn't happen as often or as openly.
I would say that rule probably changed in probably the last 10 years.
Yeah, for sure. But I find it very distraughting to myself that I've seen the military basically used as almost like a social experiment. You know what I mean? Like, because like there was like that "don't ask, don't tell" policy that was around forever.
Yeah.
And then they obviously changed that. What was that, like 10 years ago or so? Almost.
Yeah, I want to say it was close to 10 years ago.
And then just more recently, there was that whole issue with transgenders.
Yep.
And all that. And I think it was Trey Gowdy that actually called that out and said, the military is not a social experiment. This is our kill unit. When you really think about it, the military is your defense. It's your nation's defense.
Yep.
And that means, which nobody wants to talk about that's not in the military, but that means violence.
Yep.
The military needs to be able to inflict an extreme amount of violence when needed.
Yep. They need to be able to take lives.
Right. So when we're talking about like all these socially acceptable behaviors and political correctness, I just don't think the two really mix very well.
They don't.
And I think that's some of the problems that we've listed here.
They don't.
Ian, you look like you got something you want to say.
No, it's hilarious to me. I mean, seems pretty straightforward. Like you guys are like you're trying to get somebody to want to go to go to war and then like do the job of war. So I mean, like, well, you're adding all these externalities that like and making a big deal out of it. It's like, how is that like how often is that really going to come up? You have to have these conversations like this much or this publicly. It's like, dude, I mean, you can't have wars with words. Like, I don't want to be defended by that person.
Right.
At all, dude. That seems. I'll rely on myself.
Well, I mean, they always said the pen mightier than sword, but I'm sorry, every now and again you got to go out there and kick somebody's ass. Like, it's how it goes. I mean,
I wouldn't want to fight anybody with with a sword with my pen. I wouldn't want to fight with.
Well, no, I mean, realistically, like I think let's go back to our last president. I feel like he tried to solve a lot of problems with documents. Like, you guys get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
like he wanted to solve it like in a meeting, and I'm like, no, you don't solve conflict that way. I'm like, somebody's got to go and get their fucking ass kicked for them to realize that, hey, maybe I shouldn't have fucked with these guys. Like,
well, I mean, I think you're supposed to try to at first, but the point is that not everybody is receptive to that, especially when you're talking about extremists.
Yeah, you got a point.
I mean, because even back in World War II, I think wasn't it Roosevelt that was president at the time before.
Yep, FDR.
FDR, and I think he even sent a letter to Hitler, which Hitler publicly mocked in front of all of his German officials. Basically, FDR was trying to talk him out of invading surrounding countries and he basically just mocked him and just said, look how weak these Americans are. They're scared of us. And it's like, yeah, you can't really reason with somebody like that.
Yeah, who won the war?
You have exactly. You have to go and fight them.
Exactly. And that's huge. But yeah, I think honestly part of the issue nowadays is lack of training. But you know what's also crazy though? And not to offend anybody, because I know people that suffer from PTSD a lot. But it seemed like older wars, people didn't have PTSD as bad as they do now.
It definitely wasn't addressed like it is now.
Yeah, and me, I know my dad fought in Vietnam actually. And he would tell me, they actually live out by a military base, an army base in Arizona. And he would tell me anytime that they were running like night operations and he'd hear choppers, he'd wake up. Yeah. You know, it's just, you know, everybody suffers from it from a different level, but I don't know. It seems like maybe you're right. Maybe it just wasn't addressed. Maybe it wasn't as, not common, but maybe people just didn't know how to go about dealing with it.
Well, I mean, they did, but like in most of human history, it was always, you know, you just kind of had to deal with it. And if, you know, you acted out for whatever reason, I mean, it's the way it was. Now, there's a whole aspect of trying to treat PTSD, which I honestly think they're doing a horrible job of. I really do. I mean, it's great that they're trying to, you know, make people understand it, but really, PTSD, especially when it comes to like combat, it's one of those things that you really can't understand unless you've experienced it.
Did you?
I think though, like that. There seems to, because they used to call it Shellshock, right? Which I imagine that it does have to do with the explosions. Because like when you think of humanly about like an explosion, like there's not, okay, if that gets too close to me, there's just no hope.
Yeah,
like, you
exactly.
know what I mean? There's no like, you know, it's like there's no chances like if I do this, then maybe I'll survive. You know, like you don't really have any options. Like, so I mean, if it hits you, you're done. There's no avoiding it. There's no getting out of there. So I think that like. And then that being repeated over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
Like, I think imagine that like weighs in the psyche. Because I mean, when people fought like hand-to-hand combat or like, you know, like fought each other like that, there's a lot of skill. You know what I mean? So I mean, like you had some close calls. You know, it's not like I imagine it still got like, you know, like problems with war, even like having like shell shock or PTSD, whatever you want to call it. Like even like back in the day. But I think there's no getting out of it. Plus, like you know, like just loud noises in general. Like they make the average person jumpy. You hear like a door.
Well, yeah, exactly.
That, you know?
Yeah, you're not wrong. I wonder if part of that too is like back in the day, and I say back in the day like I'm from that era, but whatever. Like during World War II, World War One, especially those two. Vietnam, of course, we had more advanced medicine at that point, but maybe because the medicine wasn't so advanced then. Maybe it was more of a situation of like, and maybe because of the times themselves, people came back from war and they didn't have a choice to go and take time off and go get seen for this stuff. They had to come back and provide for their families.
Exactly.
And so maybe that played in a key factor into that. But I think that
definitely
the change in warfare itself has really brought PTSD into light.
Right.
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
No, Ann, you go.
All right.
Yeah.
I think there was more men's clubs back in the day. There was way more like, you know, like those people who went and did that. There was also like people you would still hang out with some of those people that you went to war with.
Yeah.
And you were all dealing with the same thing. I think that like, you know, you pick kind of from like all over the country. So like what are the odds that you see your like platoon or whoever like again like nowadays? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because like when it was like the draft. And when they were doing that, it was like a bunch of people from your town did that. And then you guys got back to town. You'd see people you used to go to the men's club with, and you'd share your war stories there, and you'd do all that. I don't think there's that kind of like infrastructure that like, and that infrastructure, like there's that kind of thing going on as much anymore.
Well, you know why, right?
No, I just don't know why.
Because less than 1% of the U.S. population serves in the armed forces.
Okay, that makes sense.
When you look at the population of the United States of America, and then you do the math of less than 1%, that's not that many people, really. Right. Like our army, like looks big, and it seems huge. Yeah, there's a lot of people, but when you put it in that aspect, there's not that many people.
No. Not that many, and they've actually decreased. I was just reading something where the government has actually decreased numbers in how many people are serving.
Yep, and this is all no knowledge, guys. I mean, you can go find it on the internet. It's not hard to find it, but like I said, you know, it's harder. It's getting harder and harder for these people, for recruiters to find recruits that. You know, to go I actually had a buddy that I graduated high school with that just joined. He leaves next month for basic training. And some people join a little late. I mean, you remember Darren. Did you work under Darren?
No, I didn't.
Well, you remember him.
Yeah, I remember Darren.
He enlisted when he was 20 or when he was 33.
Yeah.
It was either 30 or 33.
Well, Chris Kyle. I mean, everybody know American Sniper. Chris Kyle. He enlisted. I mean, he was pretty old by the time he enlisted.
Yeah, exactly. And so like some people just it takes that time to really evaluate what the military's about and what they want to do with it. But you know, I talk to people about the military and like why they have no interest in it, and I'm afraid to die. Well, we're all afraid to die, but we're all gonna die at some point. And honestly, I said I couldn't think of any other way to go out than protecting people or protecting the country I love.
Right.
You know, maybe I just say it differently, but I know a lot of people that say, well, I don't want to die. Well, you have a better chance of dying in a car accident than you do of dying overseas. Believe it or not. I'm not.
Another big reasoning that I've heard from people is that they just don't believe in the vision of the United States anymore. Like, if you join the armed forces, see, guys that I've talked to who are vets, they always talk about the brotherhood aspect.
Yep.
They don't care exactly what the U.S.'s interests are or like where it's going. They only care about defending the guy next to them and having that brotherhood.
Yep.
Because we all, I mean, for most of us, we want to seek that type of camaraderie out.
It's almost like a fraternity, actually.
Yeah, right. And then when we talk about back in the day, like World War I, World War II. I mean, you had a big enemy. You had a common catastrophe and big enemy that you were all fighting together.
Exactly.
And it seemed a lot more justified, too. Like,
Right.
this guy was committing genocides. It was like, I mean, there's external reasons, just like there's always external reasons for, like, why you would go to war with somebody. But, I mean, it seemed pretty straightforward that, like, what they were doing, like, was not cool.
Right.
And,
Well,
like,
exactly.
everyone thought that. I think a big problem with, like, what happens is, like, we get lied into wars, or like not entirely honest about why we're going into a war.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And like that's I think that all adds into why people are it's less fashionable.
Well,
Yeah.
And again, a lot of that changed after Vietnam. It was Vietnam that changed a lot of that. I mean, also that was the first war that was televised like that.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad, he was a little boy during that time period, but he always talked about when he late at night there'd be the body count, and you would actually see bodies of dead soldiers, and some of them, they were torn the hell up.
Well, yeah.
The U.S. government during World War I and II was not okay. Like you like for journalists, like they made that super illegal for like you to show like how shitty the war was how it was going, and that was not okay.
And then Vietnam happened, and then it seemed like after that it changed again back to the way it was, because even like I remember after 9/11, like they never showed any graphic footage. It was always like videos of like the convoys and the videos of like stuff burning. It was never soldiers.
Then smartphones.
Oh, you're talking
we're right back to
I'm
that.
talking like media coverage.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
the media coverage after we invaded Iraq.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
During
show
the
you
first
anything
push in
crazy.
2002.
Right.
You didn't hear about that. It was like, oh, hey, we're all kicking in. Like, we were all, it was a very patriotic kind of thing going on.
Yeah,
It was
exactly.
Like, yeah, we're going in there and kicking some ass and shit. Like, but now, then, like, cell phones came around. Like, cameras are cheap. Getting a
Right.
camera, like, look, we're doing this right now. There it is.
Yep.
So, like, you see everything now. So it's you kind of get that same thing going on with Vietnam again. So, and that, I don't know how you would, like, keep anything under wraps anymore either.
You kind of
So
can't actually.
Right. Well, I mean,
I don't know if we'll have wars like that anymore.
Right. I mean, who knows? But like you and me, Jason, we were talking the other day about D-Day when the United States stormed the beaches of Normandy. There was 5 beaches, and how many young men died in that? It was close to like 40,000, something like that. And that wasn't even to win the war. That was just to get a foot in the door.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I mean, imagine today if we did an invasion like that, and we had that many soldiers die just to get a foot in the door. I mean, the public outcry would be insane.
Over with.
Well, and that was the thing with Vietnam. When people were seeing this violence, when they were seeing these young men dying, and when they were hearing about kids getting killed over there, I mean, people wanted to know, why the hell are we over there? Mm-hmm. And the United States really couldn't give a very good reason, to stop communism, because of the domino effect. And people were like, get us the fuck out of there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, why are these young men coming home and having to use wheelchairs,
Exactly. It was terrible.
And you couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah. My dad remembers getting home, and there were, that was when like peace not war or whatever. And he remembers. My mom's dad was actually over there as well, and so was my other my mom's stepdad. Actually, all three of them served over there, 3 different branches, but whatever. They'll tell you stories about getting off planes and getting spit on and yelled at and being called baby killers and.
Yeah, the treatment of our Vietnam vets was definitely despicable.
And honestly, they saw some of the worst shit you could see.
Right.
Like, people don't understand what they saw over there. And, like, if you find a Vietnam vet that's willing to talk about what they saw, you're lucky. Because a lot of those veterans do not want to relive what happened over there. And that's my grandparents and my dad included. They don't talk about it.
Oh, yeah. The guys that have seen the worst, no matter what war, even guys who have served in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yep.
A lot of those guys, the ones that talk about it the most are usually the ones that did not see much action.
Exactly.
The guys that do, they just kind of, you can tell.
Yep.
You can tell.
Enthusiastic about telling those stories.
There are some of them that probably are, but most of them, most normal adults, if they saw some of the things that go on in combat, they're not going to want to talk about it.
No, they don't want to relive that.
No.
I mean, it's cool. Like, you share it with the guys you serve with because, I mean, typically you served with them.
Right.
And they were there.
Or that they have a better understanding. But, you don't really want to talk to a frat boy about, the time that you had to kill some civilians.
Yeah.
And just to get to an insurgent. You don't want to talk to a fucking college kid about that. They don't understand. They couldn't even comprehend that.
Yeah, there's no relation at all.
Right.
And I had actually one of my buddies. He did a tour over in Afghanistan, and he actually got blown up. Luckily, he was nothing happened. He ended up with a head injury, but it wasn't anything serious. But it's funny because he talks about his stories on active duty because he's in the Guard now, but he talked about his stories on active duty, and it's funny because all his stories are never about his deployments. They're always about like the dumb shit he saw when he was stateside. And it's just it's funny because you can, like you said, you can tell those guys that seen some shit.
Right.
They don't talk about it.
No, and I don't blame them. Why would you want to talk about it?
Exactly. It's not, war's not fun, and Jocko Willing said that in Joe Rogan's podcast. It's very, very terrible. It is an ugly thing.
Very ugly thing, but it's a very necessary and unavoidable thing.
Exactly.
When it comes to people, those people that think that you can negotiate and talk things through, you can't do that with everybody. You really can't. And just working corrections for me made me figure that out.
Well, we talked about that too last week when we kind of were talking about this, this subject, whatever. Look at Japan during World War II. They
weren't cool to talk about anything.
They talked peace, but did it happen? No, they bombed the shit out of us.
They didn't you did the honor culture thing.
Yeah,
that makes peace way less of an option because it's you lose. They lose more than just giving up. They get shame. They literal shame, and they would commit,
exactly
seppuku or harakiri.
Is that where they stab themselves in the chest?
Yeah. And then because that's that way they wouldn't lose their honor. So they're willing to kill themselves over that. So I mean
That's what I'm saying.
And I just want to clarify. That's when they get their samurai sword, they stab it into themselves, and then they basically have to do a half circle, basically, so that their intestines fall out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very, very violent death.
Yep.
I didn't know that they actually went.
And they actually do it to themselves, which is even the scary part. But you're right. That's like the fact that they're willing to do that to not lose honor. Like you said, some things can't be negotiated.
Belief comes belief, whatever you're believing in, how you do war or whether or not you think war is good. Because Vikings and stuff, they believe that if you got killed in battle, then you got to go live in the next world. And then if you got killed in battle in the next world, you would come back here.
Yeah.
Right? So basically it was the only way, and if you didn't, then you would go to hell if you didn't do that.
Yeah.
So the basic, they were totally down for that sort of thing. They were just all right, yeah, we literally need war with our neighbors. Otherwise, none of us are going to be going to heaven. Being able to continue their cycle of life.
Sir, it's called Valhalla.
Yeah, you don't get to go to Valhalla. deployment, you don't get to go eat and drink and fight again, then like come back here and eat and drink and fight. Like,
but again,
you lose out on the cycle of life.
Looking back to the numbers thing, it's crazy to think that like less people want to join with the more advanced like technology and warfare that we have today, like the use of unmanned aerial vehicles like UAVs. Like honestly, like you know how awesome it is to be a pilot to do one of those. Like it's phenomenal. It's probably one of the best jobs ever.
Well, and it's probably the reason why they've cut a lot of positions in the military is because of technology.
Well, eventually in what's that robot's name, Ian?
Which
Atlas.
one?
Atlas.
Oh, Atlas, the one that does the parkour.
Yeah,
that one's crazy.
That's eventually gonna replace the soldier.
Oh yeah, dude, that's so strange to think about.
Can you imagine a military after that? Like,
yeah, because I mean, like, are you gonna go use that to go fight humans, or are you gonna go use that to fight other people's robots? That's like a whole litany of stuff. Because like that thing, it's not gonna make any moral decisions.
No, it's really
has
not.
a prime directive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's.
I feel like the danger of that is it's going to turn on us.
Well, yeah.
iRobot, come on.
Aren't there movies
they're
about
making
this?
military
Yes, exactly.
robots. They're making military. So it's like literally you're making robots that are designed to be used in the military.
But
like, that's the greatest idea, guys.
Yeah.
No,
Good job.
here's the thing, though.
That's not even the only one they have. Go ahead.
Everybody always talks about, like, if there's another world war, there's going to be no boots on the ground. It's going to be all, buttons and robots. And it's like, you're always going to have boots on the ground.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Because somebody's going to have to control that shit.
They're going to have to control it, and, unless you can really...
Robots aren't that good yet.
Yeah,
No.
unless you can really invent a bunch
series.
of robots that can, go into buildings, clear them out, and, like, actually go up steps, and, this particular robot we're talking about actually can.
Yeah.
But it's like, until you can
Flex.
actually get a legit system to do this, I mean, without any, real collateral damage, which you really can't, it's not at this point. You're always gonna have boots on the ground.
Yeah,
always.
it's gonna happen, and I mean honestly, you got to think that they're still developing this game. They're still developing Atlas. If you guys haven't looked up Atlas, you guys need to look them up.
Yeah, Atlas by Boston Dynamics.
Yep.
Also, they have this thing called Spot Mini, and then they have this other one that's like a bigger version of Spot Mini that they're also using for the military. He's definitely like a bigger, beefier looking.
And
animal. You can shove them really hard and they don't fall over.
And
So,
the thing is eventually they're gonna have to get to a point where it's gonna be reliable, but they're also gonna have to build it so that it's not just reliable, but it can withstand bullet penetration as well.
Right.
well, that's easy though.
Yeah, but
they're
you got-
really light materials
but
that
you
are
got-
bulletproof.
Yeah, but
Really
you got to
light
figure
materials.
overall weight plus consumption of energy, things of that nature. Because like you can't send a robot to go do a 26 mile foot march or whatever to go get to a DZ or something because it might not make it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So you have to understand too is like this is just a concept that's being thought of, and I know we're not the only ones that have talked about this or thought about it.
Well, it's a
No.
trade-off. Humans can still go farther, longer, and do more things, but the robots don't complain, or they
And
only take
it's a
orders.
lot
They
easier
will
to
listen, no
to repair a
soul, no
robot than it
emotion.
is to tell somebody that their kid just died.
Right.
Yep,
You know.
that's true.
And so like it'll definitely if we don't implement robots in some way, shape, or form in the next 15 to 20 years, then we're really lacking. And I'm saying implement them in some way, not necessarily to go out and kill people, but implement them in another aspect.
They're gonna
Right.
do both.
So
Because we already have drones that
Yeah,
do stuff
exactly.
like that, and so I mean, there's definitely a lot more technology that's been implemented in war.
but I mean like honestly, I think we need to get back to like warfare wise, we need to get back to hand-to-hand combat in the use of the bayonet.
Melee, you need to get some melee combat.
I think the bayonet was probably one of the best inventions in the world.
Well,
Like,
yeah, like the bayonet was like you always had spears, right? Like
Yeah.
spears was,
Yep.
and it's you can argue the spears like in other forms of it, like a halberd, like that's when they have like the axe head on it and it kind of like scoops downward.
the pike.
They had that like that. They always had those versions of
Yeah.
things, and what was cool about that is because you had a spear, and then that could also be a ranged weapon. So
Yep.
like it was like a natural thing that happened because you'd still have cavalry charges like when
Yeah,
you got
exactly.
the gun. The gun was pretty cool to have, but like you still wanted spears, and so basically you just got a 2-for-1 thing going on.
Well, the best part about it is like you can't stitch up a triangle wound,
Yeah.
and that's why.
But that's not cool to have those anymore. Like they don't want you.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Because you can't do that. That's pretty.
But the thing is
like
if you've ever heard any veterans talk about any time that they've, because there are veterans that will talk to you about getting into tussles and fights with the enemy.
Yeah.
And the thing is sometimes like that could be avoided with adding that simple thing. Now, if they grab a hold of it, you're fucked.
Why'd they get rid of the bayonet? I don't understand.
I honestly couldn't tell you. I have no idea. They used to have them on. I think they had them in Vietnam.
They did have them in Vietnam.
And then it was after that they got rid of them, and I don't know if that was because maybe it was too much extra to carry or whatever the case was. But
I doubt it, because they would just because they started making it, and basically you would have your knife that you would have, and they would
exactly.
you'd be able to attach it to your gun, so it was another 2-for-1 type of thing.
I know the military can still get them.
All right.
I just know they don't utilize them. Maybe they just didn't have a way to. Maybe they phased out because they didn't create them to attach to an M4, because they made them to attach to an M16, which an M16 isn't much different than an M4, or an M4 isn't much different than an M16. But maybe it's just they just saw it as an ineffective tool, because now we have the M4, which is a pretty accurate weapon, and they just didn't see a need for it. But honestly, when you're in hand-to-hand combat, anything's necessary. Anything can be a weapon at that point.
Yeah. And that's another thing I kind of want to talk about. I want to talk about how warfare was, basically before the Chinese I don't know if created's the right term, but basically they were the first ones to implement black powder, and this is how we get our modern day explosives.
I think that's so long ago.
No, so long ago, but it's like, imagine, because I've heard people talk about this ridiculous idea about how less violent the world was before guns, and it's like, I couldn't imagine what a battle would have been like on an ancient battlefield. Like, we're talking like Roman days or pre-Roman days. I mean, could you imagine that type of warfare as a soldier?
Oh, it would have been insane.
It would have been completely insane. The horror you would have seen.
It was like if anybody out there is does SWAT or anything like that, or is seen SWAT lines. It's pretty much like that.
Yeah.
Like they follow the same kind of rules.
Yep.
You want to be close to your people that you have next to you, and you want to form a wall out of your guys, because that's going to make you not want to because once you start to get holes in that line that you have, you get worried, and then you might want to turn and run. And when you turn and run, that's it for everybody.
Josh, did you ever
start to run away, and then whatever fast you start to be able to close in, start to attack people in their backs. As soon as all you guys start to have a line break and you start to run away, that's when everybody gets killed.
Did you ever do riot training when you were in corrections?
Yeah.
It's kind of like it would be kind of the same concept with the shields.
Except nowadays we got all sorts of tools that they didn't have back then.
But Ian's right. So when you're setting up that riot wall, you have to make sure your shields are overlapped. Because if not, you're gonna get a hole.
Yeah. And then that was what the Romans were really good at.
Yeah, exactly.
Which the Greeks, Spartans, they were definitely known for their one unit that they would fight in.
Yep.
And you didn't break that, but when you're talking about two opposing groups of dudes, and they both got weapons, and they both want to kill each other, somebody's gonna break at some point. Someone's gonna break. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, that's that was the whole idea that you would, that. And that was one of the cool, when people started showing up with those explosives and grenades and stuff like that, and you would break up that group of people, and you poke little holes in there and get everybody kind of scared, just like I say, you get in there and then you start to break them up, and then you don't have that secure, you don't feel secure anymore. When you're right next to a whole bunch of we're gonna kick their ass, we're tight, we've been practicing the hell out of this, and also if you could avoid movement. Because you take a big risk when you're trying to move this whole block of individuals.
Oh, absolutely.
If there's any way that you could dig in and build up a defense like that, and try and maintain in one spot that's fairly good and not get flanked out too badly, then that would be the best thing, because you do take severe risk trying to have charge in people.
Well, that's why some armies use the tactic to send their horses first, because the horses could plow into that, and then their people could actually climb over that and break that wall.
Yeah. You basically just waste your horses on poking a hole in there.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a great concept. It worked well. But I
Good
mean,
for them horses though.
yeah, but I mean, horses are
Yeah.
horses are replaceable. I mean,
They were a tool.
exactly. That's all. That's all.
You
They
know,
were.
you might have cared about a horse, but that wasn't the one that you were necessarily going to be.
But I think we really need to talk about like the dumbest war, and I call it the dumbest war because the tactics that they used were dumb, and that was a Revolutionary War. Who the fuck marches in a straight line and just lets somebody shoot at them?
The British.
Like who the fuck does that? Like I would.
That was a project of wargaming. So like no, it was basically they came up with war games that was to be used as actual like war, and then like so that way like people who were farther away and like not necessarily on the ground having these like battles and stuff, and then everybody kind of got used to that for a while. I don't remember the exact like literally it's like it was one of the first board games like that it became really popular. It was like war games and like they there's a word for it. It got invented like in. And it was like kind of like Eastern Europe-ish, Eastern Northern Europe, one of them countries, and then like it just got real popular from there. And then like, so you would also want to identify like you wear bright colors so that way you didn't have friendly fire. Like so, you trade off things. You know what I mean? But yeah, like you just stand there and like you fire, and that was also like a combination of like. You still have that old ancient kind of thing where it's like, all right, we're going to stand real close to each other and stay all together. But now things are being fought with like massive explosives and like
cannons.
Like that wasn't the case. You might have had like a ballista or like a big like a rock thrower and stuff like that. But
I just thought it was funny.
Well, yeah.
And it's kind of funny.
The British depended a lot on volume. Like,
they really did.
Their volume, because whenever the United States Army, back then went face to face with the British, I mean, we always got our ass kicked.
Oh yeah, retreats, lots of retreats.
But when our militias started fighting them, guerrilla style, that's when we were kicking their ass. And that's ultimately where we won.
Exactly. It's funny because I don't know if you knew this, but the Minutemen, which was a militia, that's actually what the National Guard was derived of.
Right.
Was the Minutemen. That's where the National Guard came from.
And I honestly think the National Guard has kind of lost its way from that because they've kind of become more, I mean, a lot of National Guard, when it comes to the uniform and the way that they train, I mean, it's really very close to the Army.
Yeah, exactly.
They are technically Army, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, so you have the Air National Guard, you have the Army National Guard.
Right.
And you also have Army Reserves. And so the Marines and the Navy actually have reserves too. They're not as commonly known. But, the National Guard is more of your home defense.
Mm-hmm.
So the National Guard trains as the Army trains, and it's all the same policies. They have to follow all the same regulations, everything. It's literally the Army. It's just
it's for that state, right?
Pretty
much state.
So yeah, state comes first.
Right.
So like so when you look at like active duty, so like Army, like active duty, like what the National Guard refers to as Big Army. Their commander-in-chief is Donald Trump.
Okay.
So like in the state of Nebraska, the commander-in-chief for the Nebraska Army National Guard and Nebraska Air National Guard is Pete Ricketts, because he's the governor.
Right.
And then it's Donald Trump or President Trump. So that's kind of it's more state level, but I mean the National Guard also supports the federal mission is what they call it. So they have the state mission and they have the federal mission. And so that's what makes them different. But yeah, the National Guard was actually derived from the Minutemen from the Revolutionary War. And I think that the Revolutionary War was a huge turning point for us as a country. Obviously, we weren't even a country at the time, but just in warfare alone.
I just want to clarify, too, when he says Minutemen, he's not talking about guys with premature ejaculation. He's talking about guys who are ready to fight in less than a minute.
Oh, I was real confused during the whole time. It didn't make any sense to me. I was like, what? Okay.
But yeah, I really feel like that was a big turning point in warfare for us. And then definitely warfare changed. World War I. We implemented airplanes, not fighting planes, but airplanes. Because, in 1903, the Wright brothers invented the airplane because in 1902, they took a cross-country vacation with their families and decided that they didn't want to do that anymore. No, I'm just kidding, but no. So we implemented planes, and that was more to get messages back and forth, as well as homing pigeons were a big thing. Now, funny thing here, if you've ever talked to people in the military, there's always that clash between the branches. Marines are better than the Army. Well, the Army's better than the Air Force, and we all hate the Navy. But who talks about the Coast Guard, right? Like realistically. But which actually, not commonly known, the Coast Guard is actually a subsidiary of the Homeland Security now.
Huh.
They're no longer considered U.S. military. But
if they ever were.
Oh yeah, exactly. If they ever were. Actually, I have a lot of respect for those guys because I can't swim.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
You need to learn to swim.
I can swim, just not well. I don't
Okay.
float. Anyways, but actually,
Unacceptable.
so before the Air Force was actually created, it was actually the Army. It was the Army Air Corps. Is actually how it started, and then it broke off and created its own branch in that aspect called the Air Force.
Just 'cause
more
the ar-
specific jobs and stuff.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That's because the Army wasn't paying for nice enough hotels.
Apparently, like, but
that. You get like better. Do they get better shit?
oh, they make more money. Yeah.
Well, that makes sense because.
Oh no,
you know, well, you're gonna get paid the same amount for some guy that you're trusting $1 million machine to, dude. Your M14 is not whatever. That does not cost that much. Dude.
No. So it's funny because I actually was talking to a guy in the Air Force, and he says, and he told me he's like yeah, he's like if we go anywhere that like with the Army, if their living conditions don't meet Air Force standards, they actually get paid more money. Like that's not a joke. That's real shit. Like
Right.
which cool, great for you guys. You guys are in the Air Force, but whatever. If you ain't flying, you ain't shit. So that's my own personal opinion.
No.
I actually have a lot of respect for pilots.
Oh yeah, dude. And also, they still like pilots will still take like stimulants and stuff because I mean like to just because if you have like long shifts and like doing long like they'll still take stimulant. It's not sanctioned by the government, but like there are pathways that are easier.
Honestly,
for them to get, like legal speed.
All I know is I went and saw the Lincoln Air Show when the Blue Angels came down a couple years ago, and I love the F-22 Raptor. It's my favorite plane. It's fucking awesome. And he was like they were doing like the display, like his like little fucking thing, whatever you call it, his moment.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this dude's getting paid to go like screw around in a $22 million piece of equipment or whatever, however much it costs. It's millions of dollars. I'm like, he's literally just up there fucking around. Like he's like it doesn't get any better than that. Like,
And if you're scared of heights, it's the perfect job for you.
oh man, it's just phenomenal. And this thing so it literally, if you've never seen a live performance of the F-22 Raptor, you need to go see it because it's fucking amazing. So he's coming at us, right? And you see him, and he's already past you before you hear him. Like, bro, like if I'm an enemy overseas and then I hear it, it's already too fucking late.
It's gonna fuck.
Yeah,
it's gonna
you're
fuck
dead.
with you,
Like you need to see that shit coming, and it's crazy. But yeah, man, it's almost phenomenal to think about like how many. Which actually, did you know that the Navy has more airplanes than the Air Force does?
That makes sense. You have those you have aircraft carriers and stuff, so
Yep.
that makes sense. And that's where most of the planes would be deployed from anyway.
Exactly.
They
They
in
would-
a war situation. What are you just going to have your own airport in an area? You're gonna have to pay for that.
I mean,
You know, have to maintain a
the
military
US
base in somebody else's country. That's a whole thing.
No, the U.S.
Even though we do that.
Yeah, exactly.
a
The
lot.
U.S. has air bases in other countries, like,
Mhm.
but it's more of a presence. It's not really like
Well, if you have a movable like you have a movable air
Yeah,
base, that's,
exactly.
That's way nicer.
exactly, and you can get it anywhere, and that's
Yeah.
the thing is you don't got to worry about them sitting on the ground somewhere.
Mhm.
Aircraft carriers completely changed naval warfare.
Oh hell yeah, they did.
Entirely, dude. Like basically, it made obsolete most other like they don't really have gunboats anymore. Like you have missile boats and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and then you have aircraft carriers. There's no real point in having anything else. You know, there's an American aircraft carrier comes upon like a whole bunch of boats, just like in Pearl Harbor. You
Yeah.
know, we didn't really have. Like they caught us off guard and stuff like that. You should go screw up like a whole fleet of boats. It'd be real easy.
Yep.
You know, and
Yeah, we don't have as
Crazy
many
thing.
battleships anymore as we used to.
Nope.
But I mean, we still have them. We still have them, but it's like you said, the aircraft carrier changed everything. Being able to get to scrambled jets that fast, was just crazy. And I think that's that's what makes the U.S. Like people tell us that we don't have the biggest army, and you're right, we don't. China has the biggest army.
We had the best outfitted army.
We have the strongest army
Yeah.
because of the amount of technology and what we have.
We have the guns and they have the numbers.
Exactly, and that's kind of shitty, but I mean, like that's the reality of it, you know.
Right.
But yeah, it's crazy. Like obviously, none of us were alive during World War II.
No.
I don't know if that's really a time I'd want to be alive. I feel like the country in itself is in a better place, even though it was in a very struggling place because of the economy of war.
All right.
But a lot of people don't know this, but World War II actually pulled the U.S. out of the Great Depression. it actually, we had to manufacture tanks, we had to manufacture planes, which World War II was when air warfare was actually introduced.
Europe got destroyed, and we had the factories to supply everybody everything else to fix Europe.
And so
basically we had a huge influx of people wanting our goods, so that way they could try and fix Europe.
Yep.
And then we had built up all those factories that were had we converted them for war, and then we converted them back, and then there was a huge supply for all that stuff. So
exactly.
You're right. It did but it wasn't just about, people think about a little bit, seem to conflate it more with just about the war and producing bombs and stuff like that. It wasn't about that. It was there's a whole litany of goods, because basically you flattened just whole massive city centers.
Yep.
All over Europe, and people want stuff.
You're not wrong. People need that stuff to fix their livelihood and continue living.
Wasn't that part of the theory of the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower talked about?
Yeah, but I mean, okay, so who we've been in the Middle East for a while, right?
Yeah.
So we've been doing that whole that would be what the military-industrial complex is up to right now. I don't think that you would get that benefit out of that, because there's not these huge, massive city centers. There are, but it's not nearly as densely packed. And also, we don't seem to want to end it either. So I think wars get weird when you extend them for more than 20 years.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because now, for whatever reason you started the war, things have changed now. You literally have whole generations of people who have been at war. And they might want to go fight. They might hate America not because of our freedom or any kind of ideological reason anymore. They hate you because you killed their dad. All right, which is a good reason to hate somebody. If somebody kills your dad, I would want vengeance pretty quick.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So and I don't know what are we gonna rebuild over there? I don't imagine they would want to be doing trade deals with us. The part of the whole thing that we got out of Europe and stuff like that is that a lot of Europe was already doing trade deals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We do have trade deals going on over there, but I don't know if I just don't see the ideological reason why they would want us to go ahead. I don't think we're gonna get those same kind of benefits.
Well, not only that, I mean, it's kind of
and we don't flatten city centers anymore. There was a lot of murdering civilians. That's super out. We do it. We'll still kill a bunch of civilians and destroy urban areas, but it's not as fashionable anymore.
No, and it's strongly frowned upon.
Yeah. So
well, and I kind of think back to when I was in basic training. I actually went to basic training with a guy from Iraq who was actually there during the initial invasion in 2002. And he told me, he's it was scary. He goes, they were just not really dropping bombs, but they were firing tank rounds just into the city.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of crazy. It's a lot of collateral damage, man.
That's crazy.
It is, but I mean that's a big statement. I mean that's what the Nazis used to do when they invaded countries, and they went in bombs first.
Yeah.
And so by the time you saw soldiers coming in, you weren't gonna fight them.
Nope.
Hell no, you just saw your neighbors get flattened. You just saw.
Exactly, and it was crazy. And I mean, one of the drill sergeants that was in my basic training, he was artillery, and he's like I shot rounds into Baghdad. I was like, Jesus, dude, he's like, I don't know if they hit it, but I shot him. I was like,
oh my god,
I was like, dude,
Jesus
fuck.
Christ.
All right.
Oh,
I was like, dude, that's nuts. I'm like,
oh my god.
I mean, you think about it, at that point though, it was. I mean, we had to make a statement,
I suppose somebody's gonna do that job. I don't want to do that job.
I know, because you don't know. you really don't know.
You don't know what you're doing.
And I mean, I would assume that there's a way to know, but he's just yeah. He's like.
Well,
yeah.
Plus, I mean, wasn't the idea that we're against these factions, and then occasionally we're at war with the the governments of some of these Middle Eastern countries, but I think that in World War II, we were at war with the German people.
Oh,
you know what I mean? There was we didn't, they had been killing our people, and it seemed like everybody was fine with that, or at least that was the propaganda that was going on, and that was kind of what was going on, after 9/11 is the Iraqi people hate the American people.
Yep.
So it's not we're going in there to go fuck up. We're going in there to go fuck up Iraqi people.
I think that was started during Desert Storm, and Saddam Hussein after.
Well, we armed Al Qaeda just like we armed ISIS, and we armed the Kurds. So like,
Thanks a lot, CIA.
Yeah.
Well, but like that's, okay, like I think that if we're gonna learn any lessons, it's like maybe we should stop arming rebel groups in the area, so that way we don't have to go then fight them later. You know.
Well, maybe we should confiscate their weapons.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, Beto.
No, we gave them the weapons. We don't need to go take them away. But I mean, like, we definitely don't need to keep giving more people weapons. They have guns. That thing needs to solve itself. All right, we don't need to be there.
Where was it? Was it France? After World War II, we gave a bunch of our equipment to a country, and I don't remember which country it was. Russia? We gave tanks and like anything that we had in Europe, we left to them. But I forget which country got all that shit.
I'm not sure.
But like, and you're right, we need to stop arming other countries because they use that shit against us.
Like, I'm for Second Amendment. Like, it's like I'm for the Second Amendment enough that I'm like, we shouldn't. In my opinion, we shouldn't be sitting here trying to do these, like, trying to force Korea to not have nuclear weapons. Korea wants nuclear weapons because, like, in between human beings like you or I, a gun is the equalizer. In between nations, nuclear bombs are the equalizer. So, like, it's like you can have guns and you can have an army, but if you want to actually, like, be armed, then you need to have nuclear weapons. We don't go fuck with people who have nuclear weapons. That's just like our military industrial complex is not retarded. They won't do. You want to start a nuclear war. That can get quite out of hand.
Yeah. Well, and I think that was one of President Trump's like goals when he started, and he stepped into when he made it his goal to step into North Korea. Like, that's not been accomplished by any other president. But the question is, have other presidents really had that much like effort put into what they're trying to accomplish with that?
All right. That was definitely, and I was impressed with that.
I was too. Everybody talks down about President Trump, whatever. I'm like, but look at the milestones he's created just in the 3 years he's been in office. Do I agree with him? Not 100% of the time. It's kind of rough sometimes. He makes some decisions, and I'm like, well, probably shouldn't have done that. But I'm just one voice.
Right. And that leads me kind of to one last point I want to touch on is what's your opinion? Because it seems like for the longest time in the United States, most presidents have served in the military in some type of fashion. And then we got to a point where a lot of them, like, especially recent ones, none of them really did do much service.
No. Because
when George Washington, one of the big reasons why he was chosen to be the first president was not just because of his family's influence, but he was a stud in war.
Yep. He was a general.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. We have these career politicians, whereas like they literally have done politics your whole life. And so you don't know about other things. Like but we're supposed to trust all the things with you. I don't see like that doesn't make any sense to me at all. Like why would you want them to do that? Like these people don't run businesses; they run campaigns. That's all they do. They're expert convincers, and like that's I don't know.
So like that. You're basically talking about just politicians as a whole, or you're talking about like presidents who.
Well, I mean, presidents, politicians, like that's like kind of the thing is like you have to kind of like work your way through politics, and so I think it requires a more inordinate amount of time for you doing that than it used to. Because I mean, like George Washington, for instance, like he was the first president. He was a farmer, and then he was a general. He did a lot of different stuff. Like he had to run his own household. Like like he had done a lot of different things before he ever ended up being in charge. So he kind of like feel for how things in general work.
Well, yeah, exactly. And so like going into that discussion, it's like, so you said that it seems like a lot of recent presidents weren't really didn't really serve in the military. But it's kind of like, so George Washington was a general.
Yeah.
Okay. But Abraham Lincoln was not. He was a lawyer.
Yeah.
But he wasn't a career politician.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that I feel about it is there was a lot of the presidents that served held a general rank. You had General Eisenhower as well.
Right.
Teddy Roosevelt. He served as well. I don't
Rough Riders.
I don't exactly what he did or anything like that. But some of our best presidents weren't people who served.
Yeah.
I mean, FDR he had polio, but probably one of the best presidents in history.
That's debatable though.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought he was for the time period that he was president and what he had to deal with. I think he handled it kind of very well. You know, I mean that's a lot to take in. I mean he's president through most of World War II. So I mean he was
president too many times.
Well, yeah, he's also the reason why they only get 2 terms.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like
he was the Nancy Pelosi of that time.
Oh, I wouldn't necessarily go that far.
Well, she's not president, so you can't go that far.
Well, and then you had who was the last president that served? Was it George W?
Probably. No, I mean he didn't serve. He was he
was
was supposed to fight in Vietnam, but I don't think he ever. He didn't actually go.
He didn't go.
So how far back does that go?
Well, I mean, we all know JFK. I mean, he was a World War II hero, as the story goes, which I believe. Well, didn't Carter serve, or did he not serve?
I couldn't tell you.
Reagan, did he not serve? Was he just a movie star?
I couldn't tell you.
Honestly, yeah. But like, I think, but honestly,
we're idiots.
Honestly,
No, well, honestly, it's something I'd have to look up to be honest with you. But
to me, it's a big problem because the commander-in-chief is the head of the military.
yeah,
And to me, you should have some experience with some type of combat to be making that decision. You know, when to send. You know, because like I would trust a guy like Jocko Willink with that decision because he seems to know the consequences very well. And so he's not going to send, you know...
I don't think he'd start wars willy-nilly.
No, he's not going to start wars over anything stupid.
exactly.
I mean, so, you know, he's going to send in guys knowing that a lot of them are probably not coming home, and it's going to be for a good reason.
Exactly, and I think where Jocko stands on wars is a huge testament to him as an individual. But honestly, I don't think that from a president standpoint they need to serve, but like you said, to make those kind of decisions, that it's key, and not even to serve it in a higher rank, but just to have that experience in the military to understand that, like, okay, this is why we don't do this.
I think they should at least have all been in a fist fight at some point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because the thing is we get in these habits of where we want to like Obama's thing, apologizing to Japan for Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Like, no, fuck them, dude. No, like,
why are you apologizing about this? Didn't you signed a peace? We as a nation signed a peace treaty. I don't know if you noticed, but that's the apology. Like when you sign a peace treaty, like they're like, hey man, that sucked, right?
Exactly.
Right,
yeah.
let's not do this anymore. All right, it's taken care of. You know? Like,
what did we learn?
That just makes you look weak.
Exactly.
Like why? That just makes your people look weak. Like, why would you even want to? Why?
But what I'm getting at is if we had somebody like Jocko in office, that shit wouldn't fly. No. He wouldn't be like, no, we're he's like, he'd be like, we're not apologizing to him. He goes, no, you know, and just he seems like that kind of guy. He carries himself that way.
Did they want the apology?
I don't even know.
Or did we just do that?
Obama,
we felt bad.
Obama, I feel like Obama was more like the president that wanted to go kiss everybody's ass to make things better, and unfortunately, we all know what ass kissing does. It doesn't help anything.
He's just one of these convincers. Like, you know, it's like it seem like if you wanted to kiss everybody's ass, like why start 5 wars in a row?
Yeah,
that doesn't sound like ass kissing. And like,
but that's what I'm saying. Is like we need to reevaluate. Like, and so yeah, like you said, it would be nice to have somebody in office that's seen this kind of violence before and understands that, you know, when you make a decision of that magnitude, you're putting people's lives in danger, and there's a possibility that you could cost a lot of lives.
Right.
And I know you're sitting in an office, you're writing this shit down, you're signing it, whatever. But you don't know what the end state is.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, the end state, it's like, what is that, Operation Red Wing? Based on Lone Survivor. You ever seen the movie?
Yeah.
It was based off of that. Same thing. You know, they kind of got caught up in a shitty situation, but it was like, you know, it's making those decisions. Benghazi was another one. Right. You know, and it cost people lives. And people don't understand that. And I've said this before, and I mentioned it in another podcast. When seconds count, help is minutes away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the shitty part about it is you need to outweigh every aspect, and I do this just naturally in life. I'll look at a situation and I look at every possible worst outcome and every possible best outcome in the route to get there. I don't know, maybe that's just my military way of thinking, but like you have to take that shit into account when you're thinking about doing something risky. No matter what it is, whether it be starting a business, whether it be sending somebody into a fucking battle.
Right.
You know, there's pros and cons to everything, and what was that? Every reaction has an equal and greater reaction.
Yeah, I remember so earlier in the day you came running at my second builder with these. We have these little pieces of wood that they're kind of fun to use as swords when we're fucking off and not doing our job, and you were fucking with him, and so I saw you do that, and then my opposite and greater reaction that I had from that is I came running at you with my own. And you did a good job. You blocked it pretty quick, especially considering it was a surprise attack around a corner. So you did well.
Yep. So
it's a jumping strike. I lunged very,
Yeah.
You survived.
Yes, I would have survived that.
This was a rough battle.
But yeah. I mean,
lost.
To finish up, our military's definitely changed a lot, and I don't know if it's going to be for the better or if it's going to be for the worse. To be honest with you.
I don't think it's gonna be for the better, in my opinion.
I think the military's gone soft. That's my opinion.
I think a lot of parts of society have gone soft,
and it's not gonna bode well if we get in another major conflict.
But the robots are sturdy.
They are very sturdy. But yeah, that's just one thing I want to close on. Is there's definitely a lot of people in important positions making very important decisions, and I just don't think a lot of these leaders I don't think they understand the consequences of their actions.
Yeah.
Like, I really do think that somebody who's making decisions on war should have some personal experience on the consequences of that.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, like in corrections, we always kind of made a joke that people who state senators who made policies about use of force on inmates should have to fight an inmate at least once.
Yep.
Or do you think that there should be a policy for that like you should have to have served? Or you do? I don't think so.
But wait, hold on. Finish that question.
So,
Because I said yes pretty quick.
So, do you think that there should be a policy, like legislation, that requires somebody's eligibility to be voted in as president, or to
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
I do.
I
think they should at least.
Why not? Why not?
Okay, and if they didn't serve, I think they should be in a shootout.
Okay. No. Okay, so let's change this. I'll rephrase this. I want legislation that states that they either served or spent time in a high-risk job like law enforcement, or
You want legislation.
Yes.
I feel like that's a huge affront to democracy.
Why?
Well, we get to choose who they are. You know what I mean? Like, I don't by taking away our ability to choose who the president is, we should make better choices picking who the president is.
But I
don't think you can force that through legislation by making the government more powerful.
Look at the last two elections, though. Look at the last two elections, Obama and Trump. Look who we had as candidates. If you had somebody in there that knows how to make high-risk decisions under a shit ton of pressure.
You want that legislative into law?
I guess, okay, I get where Ian's coming from. He's coming from the libertarian side where we should be able to choose. And I agree with that. In my opinion, and in your opinion,
yes.
we do think it should be somebody who served.
Or at least isn't...
The libertarian side of us, we don't want to create more legislation.
I mean, I think that was part of why people picked Trump a little bit. Not because he did serve, but because he did other things. Besides be a politician. He wasn't a career politician.
Well, exactly.
He didn't have a big career in convincing.
But
he had to do other stuff.
But isn't running a business politics?
I mean,
there's politics involved.
I know.
But,
right.
So yeah, I guess he had experience on the business politics side.
Right.
But I mean, you got a point there, Ian. Like Josh said, we have to agree with the fact that we should have the right to choose who we want. I just feel that we could get a lot more out of somebody who's been in a situation where they're in charge of people.
Yeah. I think we like people who are bosses, and have
CEOs.
done things.
CEOs would be great.
Well, I mean, we have lots of those.
But career politicians.
Yeah. No, I don't do that anymore. I don't think that we're gonna vote I think Trump's gonna get elected again, but I think it'll be kind of interesting. Like who's next after that?
You have a really good point. I see people like Nancy Pelosi and Bernie, and. I'm sorry. They probably die in office.
Whole life. And they were old as shit.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like they don't understand how today's society runs. But it's kind of good. We need somebody from our generation to make it into office.
Yeah.
Because they grew up during Go ahead, Josh. Sorry.
I was going to say that they will one day, but this is all stuff we're going to say for another podcast.
Yeah, you're definitely not wrong.
Because we definitely rabbit trailed from war and military. So
well, not really, because like when you think of warfare, you're still talking people making decisions.
yeah, but definitely not Nancy Pelosi.
Oh, exactly. So I mean,
I'm pretty sure I could beat her in a fist fight, Nancy.
But
If you're watching this,
but that's one of those things. Is definitely, you
All right.
yeah. I think we should probably end it on that. Like,
all right.
I don't want Josh to get arrested for a threat.
Threats to politicians.
You know
guys.
what? I think
a good way to end.
I think I would smile with getting arrested for that.
I don't know. But
I think one right
Isn't that
hook should
scary
go
though?
down.
If Air Force One crashes, she's the president.
really,
Isn't she? She's Speaker of the House, right?
What happened
That's
to
the
Pence?
third person. No,
Yeah.
I said if Air Force One crashes and they're both on there. Sorry, I should have clarified. If they're both on the plane at the same time, Air Force One crashes, she's the president. That's crazy, dude. Sorry, don't mean to give the CIA any ideas.
I was gonna
We
say, why are
shut
you
this shit
playing
down,
seeds,
dude.
Ian? Why?
Hey, I'm sure they thought of this already.
All right, guys. That's it for us. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Again, you can get a hold of us at midwestmymelt@gmail.com, Facebook and YouTube as well. Make sure you click the subscribe button and hit the little bell so every time we upload a video, you get a notification. Ian, thanks for coming back on the show, man.
Hey, it's fun. It's just fun doing this.
We will definitely have you out again,
Boom,
man.
Boom.
I mean, and that'll be all, guys.